All right, today we're cracking open a cold case file that's over 400 years old. It's about a man who honestly should be just as famous as William Shakespeare. He was a poet, a playwright, a total genius, but his story? It doesn't end with a standing ovation. It ends with a dagger. You know, when you think of the English Renaissance, your mind probably jumps straight to Shakespeare, right? Like he was the whole show. But what if I told you the guy who really lit the fuse, the one who kicked the whole thing off, was his biggest rival, a star that burned so much brighter but was snuffed out way too soon? His name was Christopher Marlowe, Kit to his friends. And trust me, his real life was way more dramatic than anything he put on stage. Think of him like a rock star poet in a very dangerous time, a Cambridge-educated genius who moonlighted as a government spy, and a total rebel who thumbed his nose at every single authority figure. And then, just like that, bam. At the absolute peak of his game, he's murdered, stabbed, right through the eye. Now, the official story, it's neat and tidy. But the truth? Oh, the truth is a whole other mess. So, let's zoom in on where this all goes down. We're talking the last few really chaotic weeks of Marlowe's life. It all comes to a head on one single day, May 30th, 1593. The place? A seemingly quiet boarding house in Deptford, which was this bustling port town right outside London. This is where Christopher Marlowe will spend his very last hours. Okay, so first, let's just lay out the official story. You know, the one that people believed for hundreds of years. The coroner's report. Wow, it's brutally specific. It says Marlowe died from a single mortal wound, a dagger wound, 2 inches deep, that went straight into his brain, right above his right eye. So here's how they said it happened. The 4 guys in the room get into an argument over the bill. They called it le rekeninge. Supposedly, Marlowe gets ticked off, grabs a dagger from this other guy, Ingram Fraser, and attacks him from behind. They wrestle for the dagger, and in the struggle, Marlowe gets accidentally stabbed. Just like that. Fraser walks, claiming self-defense. Case closed, right? But doesn't that sound a little too convenient? I mean, a literary giant, a government spy, killed in some silly fight over a few pennies? Really? Or was something else going on here? Like, maybe a carefully planned hit, made to look like a drunken brawl.
All right, let's really get into it. Because to understand the crime, you've got to understand the man. And Christopher Marlowe, well, he was anything but ordinary.
So it's pretty wild when you put him side by side with Shakespeare. I mean, they were born the exact same year, 1564, but their lives were totally different. Shakespeare, you know, son of a glovemaker, got a decent education. Marlowe, he was the son of a poor shoemaker, a total prodigy who clawed his way into a scholarship at Cambridge. And get this, he's the one who pioneered that powerful, unrhymed style of writing, that blank verse that Shakespeare would later become famous for.
I'd bet you know his words, even if you don't think you know his name. That line, it's about Helen of Troy, and it's one of the most famous lines in all of English literature. It's from his masterpiece, Dr. Faustus, and it just gives you a taste of how powerful his writing was.
But honestly, as amazing as his plays were, his life outside the theater was even crazier, and it's almost definitely the reason he ended up dead. You've got to picture the world he was living in. This wasn't some free-for-all. It was a brutal, repressive police state. The historian Stephen Greenblatt paints this picture of London where you literally see the severed heads of traitors stuck up on spikes on London Bridge. Yeah, just speaking your mind could be a death sentence.
And Marlowe? He didn't just speak his mind, he shouted it from the rooftops. He was known to be an atheist, and in that time, that was a capital crime. We're talking being burned at the stake. Then there's the fact that he was recruited right out of Cambridge to be a spy for the Queen's Secret Service, a world of secrets and backstabbing. And on top of all that, he lived as an openly queer man, which completely defied the strict rules of the time. To put it simply, the guy was dangerous to the establishment. And this is where it gets really intense. Just 10 days before he was killed, a warrant goes out for his arrest on charges of heresy. So he was already a marked man. He was out on bail, had to check in with the court every single day. The walls were closing in, big time.
So you see, once you know all this about his life, that official story about his death, it starts to look a lot less like a random tragic accident and a whole lot more like a very convenient execution.
Okay, now let's look at who else was in that room. The guy who supposedly killed him, Ingram Fraser,
He wasn't some random dude. He was an agent for a guy named Thomas Walsingham, a master spy who was also Marlowe's boss, his patron. Then there's one of the witnesses, Robert Poley. He was one of the Queen's top secret agents, a total pro. And the other witness, Nicholas Scares, a professional con man who was also mixed up in that same spy ring.
So just let that sink in for a second. The only witnesses to what was supposedly a simple bar fight were two professional spies and a con man. These guys were literally experts in deception and violence. This was not just a random group of guys having a drink. And the official investigation? It's like they didn't even want to ask the obvious questions, like why wasn't the woman who owned the house ever questioned? Who even set up this meeting in the first place? And what could four guys connected to espionage possibly talk about for 8 hours straight? And maybe the biggest red flag of all? Why was the body of the most famous writer in England shoved into an unmarked grave almost immediately? So yeah, the case of his death is officially closed, but for anyone who looks at the facts, it is wide open. But one thing that is not up for debate is his legacy.
That same scholar, Stephen Greenblatt, makes a powerful argument. He says it was Marlowe, even more than Shakespeare, who really kicked off the English Renaissance. It's like Marlowe kicked down the door, and Shakespeare just calmly walked right through it. Marlowe was the trailblazer. He's the one who showed everyone what the English language could really do on a stage. And you have to wonder, with Marlowe suddenly and violently out of the picture, the path was totally clear. His biggest competition was just gone, wiped off the board. And that left the stage wide open for his frenemy, William Shakespeare, to become the legend that we all know today. So that leaves us with the big question, doesn't it? Did a man this brilliant, a man who literally changed English literature forever, really die over a bar tab? Or was this a state-sanctioned hit designed to silence a voice that was just too dangerous? And then there's the wildest theory of all. Some people whisper that the whole thing was faked, that Marlowe escaped into exile and kept writing. We'll probably never know the real answer. But the mystery? Well, that's just as timeless as his words.